Can anybody hear me now? I'm trying a different audio setup today. Can everybody hear me right now okay? Let me know if the sound is good, because I'm testing a couple of different audio setups. Abhishek says it's good right now. Yeah, yesterday I realized there could be a couple of issues, so I'm testing that. So if the sound is good, let me know. If the sound is not good, then let me know, okay? All right. Okay, so again, this is our academic website here with the blue background. You can click that big red button to join. And this is our general IELTS website here with the green background. You can click that big red button there to join the premium package. And again, students, today we are focusing on task 1 writing, specifically a diagram. One of our members requested this question, this class. We're going to write a band 9 response. All right, if anybody has any questions, you can always send me an email, adrian@aehelp.com. And after this class, we'll have listening again, part 3 and part 4, and I will do my best to make sure that you have some good audio here. All right, so let's take a look at today's question. Here's our task 1 question for the day. Let's read this carefully. Okay, so let's have a look at this, students. Let's read this carefully. IELTS task 1 writing. You should spend about 20 minutes on this task. The diagram below shows how the Australian Bureau of Meteorology collects up to the minute information on the weather in order to produce reliable forecasts. Write a report for a university lecture describing the information shown below. You should write at least 150 words. That's minimum. So this question, I believe, was in one of the past IELTS exams. It's coming from Cambridge past papers. And it's an interesting question. It's a good question. Let's take a look at the diagram here quickly. So here is the diagram. It's a bit big, so I'll shrink the screen so you can see all of it for now. Okay, I know the sides will be a bit bright, but anyhow, that's what the image looks like here. So you have a computer in the middle, then you have TV news report, radio, and recorder announcement on the right-hand side. And then here you have some different pieces of information. Clearly, this diagram goes from left to right. So the data is collected through these sources into the analysis, the computer system, and then it is broadcast to the public through these different mediums. Okay? So that's what we'll look at here. Frederick, the focus might just be the stream. I set the focus before we began, but I'll maybe set it again just to double check here. So that's what we have to write a report about. Now, pay attention, students. One part that I really like about this task 1 question is here the question actually says, write a report for a university lecture. So the way I sometimes say this in classes, if you've been in these classes before, is when you're doing task 1 for the academic IELTS, you have to write it as if you're going to give a presentation to your class about that diagram. So kind of think about your task 1 as if you have, just like what I'm doing here, the diagram or the chart up on a projector on PowerPoint, for example, and you're actually giving a professional discussion about that diagram, okay? The reason that's important is because you're not just simply reporting the numbers, all right? A lot of students, what happens is they write their task 1 where they basically just reflect the percents, the ratios, the numbers, the dollar signs that's in task 1, but they don't really change the information into human language, into language that we use when we're presenting. Is that clear? So your goal, if you want those high band 7, band 8, band 9 task 1 marks, is to change the data, change the information into clear, connected human language that can be easily understood by your audience. Okay? Is that clear? So I'll make a quick note on that just to remind you that this is what you want to practice at home. Okay? Don't just simply write about the numbers that you see. Okay? So for band 7 to 9, task 1 essays, your goal is to, and the key word here is interpret the data. Now, interpret does not mean give an opinion, but not give personal opinion about the data and information that you see in the chart or diagram. This means clear, connected language that is easily understood by your reader. One way to think about this, members, is think about if your reader doesn't actually see the graph, do they still have a clear idea what you're talking about? So here's a little trick. Ask yourself, if I give my task 1 essay to a friend who is not, the key word here is not, looking at the graph, can they get a clear idea of my discussion? Or in this case, your expository essay. And this will be your goal in university as well. That's why in the academic IELTS they give you this task 1, because they know that for most majors, okay, whether it's psychology, mathematics, computer science, biology, you're going to do these kinds of presentations in English, these PowerPoint type presentations and these expository type essays. So they want to see how well you can do this, okay? So ask this question. That's why you shouldn't use phrases like the chart below or the table below. Your reader doesn't see the graph. They don't know what's below or what's above. So don't discuss the position of information on a piece of paper that's not available to your audience. Okay, that's just one example of the kind of language that you want to avoid to get those better band scores. Okay. All right, so let's take our first step here. Let's start with the overview, okay? So again, your task 1 should have 3 parts, not 4, all right? 3 parts. 1 is the overview, 2 is the analysis, or analyses for plural, and 3 is your summary, okay? This is exactly what you would do in your presentation, so in a good presentation. What I see a lot of students doing instead of this is they do this instead, okay? Do not do this. It's common. I see this commonly, okay? 1, introduction, 2, overview, 3, analysis or analyses, okay? And I'll explain this for your logic, okay? So what a lot of students do is they write a 2-sentence introduction that's a paraphrase of the question. Then they give an overview, which is the main features, and then they give an analysis, okay? It's not terrible, but it's not as valuable as this approach. Here, the overview includes the introduction. When you're watching a presentation in school on a topic about a graph, some data, at the end of that presentation, you want to have a summary. You want to have a message from the presenter of what we learn from the diagram, right? So that's kind of the clear part of the summary here. So what do we learn after analysis? Okay, so what is it that we have to highlight? And that's much more valuable to your audience than just giving an analysis and then being like, okay, see you guys later, just figure the rest out on your own. So your goal as a presenter is always to have that complete concept, okay? All right, so let's get into it. Let's do the overview here. So for the overview, you give a paraphrase of the question with more details. That's already your start. That's already part of your overview, okay? So let's do that together now. So part one is paraphrase the question with more detail, okay? So again, look at the words here, use synonyms, use descriptive paraphrasing. The diagram below shows how the Australian Bureau of Meteorology collects up to the minute information on the weather in order to produce reliable forecasts. And of course, use the information here. Now, notice that here it says incoming information, analysis forecasting, preparing the broadcast, and then broadcast. Okay, so what that tells us is this is kind of like a column. So when we're talking about the incoming information, all of what we have under here is where the information comes in. Okay, then under here will be the analysis forecast, then the preparing the broadcast and the broadcast. Okay, so use that information, and then here we have several elements. We'll use that after. Okay. So firstly, paraphrase. I'm going to do the same. I will paraphrase this as well. All right. And then we'll compare. So okay, so let's see what you came up with, and then I'll show you what I wrote here. All right. So Samuel says the given flow diagram, very nice Samuel, depicts the framework of the Australian Meteorological Department to gather minute by minute weather data to make accurate forecasts. Yeah, nice with the minute by minute. That's what I was trying to come up with, Samuel, and you got it. Hassan says the diagram illustrates the main 4 steps of collecting weather data, gathering information, analyzing, preparing, and broadcasting at the Australian Bureau of Meteorology. That's really nice too, Hassan. That works. That's a very good start. Okay, so you alluded to those 4 different stages in this process right off the bat, and that's perfectly fine to do. Watch your spelling with the broadcasting instead of podcasting. I don't think they're podcasting, but anyway, it was great, Hassan. That was good. Okay, Abhishek says the figure depicts how the Australian Agency Weather Prediction gathers the latest data on climate in order to produce consistent forecasts. Really nice paraphrasing, Abhishek, as well. paraphrasing weather with climate. That works. Okay. The latest data is very good for up to the minute. Okay. Minute by minute is more accurate. Latest is also quite good. I used real time, but that's technically not right. If some of you are really into this type of information, you'll know that real-time data and up-to-the-minute data is not quite the same. That's why I erased mine. So what I wrote here is this flow diagram depicts the system used by the Australian Bureau of Meteorology to gather up-to-the-minute data on weather to create a dependable forecast which it can transmit to the public through various means. Okay, so that's what I did, somewhat similar to some of yours. Different ways to skin the cat, as they say, so there's more than one way to start off right. What's important is that you're paraphrasing well and accurately with detail. Okay, so far looking good, members, looking really good. Dr. Krishna says, the given diagram depicts the system of information for gathering prognostic weather by the Australian Bureau of Meteorology, which includes collecting information through satellite via satellite picture. Dr. Krishna, that's good. I think the through satellite via satellite picture, you want to leave that out because it's too granular. It means it's too detailed, and it's only a part of the picture, so we haven't seen the rest of it yet. Okay. So I would just stop. I see you have a little bit more there, Dr. Krishna, but I would just stop at information, okay? Don't open with too long of a sentence, all right? Ayana says, the diagram presents the process of how reliable forecasts are made available to the public by the Australian Bureau of Meteorology by gathering real-time data about weather. Yeah, Ayana, that's good. And in the IELTS, they probably won't pick at you for writing real-time data, although real-time and up to the minute, it's not quite the same, but close. In a university class, your professor might say, hey, wait a second, that's not real-time data. That's just before real-time, so just before. Okay. Daniel Tarasov says, the given diagram illustrates the process of producing weather forecasts by the Australian Bureau of Meteorology with up-to-the-minute data accuracy to provide the most reliable broadcasting. Yeah, and you don't need to repeat weather, Daniel, because you have weather earlier in that nice long sentence, so avoid the word repetition within the sentence. Okay, Daniel? All right. Pavan says the picture represents how the Australian Bureau of Meteorology broadcasts weather predictions minute by minute through 3 processes. I believe it's actually 4, Pavan, so careful, but we'll get there. Frederick says the flow diagram shows the process of how to produce weather forecasts in the Australian Bureau of Meteorology. Yeah, Frederick, not bad. There's a couple of unnecessary words there, so careful with that kind of redundancy. Okay, so now we want to add the main features, right? So the second part of your overview is the main features. Okay, so to add the main feature without going into detail. Okay, so just the main features here. All right, so here, I'm going to shrink this again. I think it's the image, Frederick, that's not the sharpest here. It's, I tried to grab one that was as clear as possible, but I think it's maybe the image size or something like that. Anyway, so what we can see here is we can see basically 3 columns. Now, they don't actually tell you that these are the columns. You kind of have to realize that on your own. It's like you're having an imaginary line drawn at these sections here, okay? So the first one is incoming information. The next one is analysis and forecasting. After that comes broadcasting, and then the broadcast. So staying calm in the IELTS is very important. Staying confident. At this point, you finish the listening and the reading, so your brain's getting a bit tired. So you really have to just take a deep breath and pay attention, because the analysis in task 1 can make a big difference in the quality of your writing and how well you're going to do. Okay? So the main feature here clearly are these 4 elements. Okay? So that's what we're going to report on. All right? Each of them have several components. Okay? Except for apparently the preparing the broadcast, that we just have a computer system there. I guess if they gave us more information, we'd probably have more components, but we're just going off of the diagram in this case. Okay, so for the main feature, just report these 4 elements, and then maybe make a reference to having multiple components except for preparing the broadcast. Okay, so write a nice sentence for the overview about that main feature. Can everybody see these words? I'll show them to you a little bit better here. So these are the 4 column headings, basically. Incoming information, analysis and forecasting, preparing the broadcast, and then the broadcast. Okay, makes sense. There's, I think, a fair bit of logic in this case. All right, write the main feature. I'm going to do the same. Okay, so incoming information, all right. So there's my overview. I'm just going to move this down for convenience. Okay. All right. Let's see what you've come up with. So Hassan is quick out of the gates. That's good. Students, you want to definitely work on your writing speed along with the accuracy of your writing and with the content of your writing, right? So those are the 3 parts that you're always focusing on: content, accuracy, and complexity, and the fluency of your writing. You want to combine those so that you can do really well in that 20 minutes, okay? So Hassan says overall there are 4 main phases: data collecting, analyzing, preparing the information, and finally broadcasting with a small b, Hassan. Nice job, Hassan, of paraphrasing some of those. Absolutely, it's a good idea. Make sure they're accurate. In your case, Hassan, it is accurate. Okay, data collecting, that makes sense. Analyzing and forecasting, that's fine too. Okay, so good job. Pavan says it is apparent that the process of the broadcast has 4 significant steps: incoming information, analysis and forecasting, collection of broadcast. It's preparation of the broadcast, right? Preparing it, putting together the information, and ultimately broadcasting. Yeah, Pavan, just be really careful of the, again, the redundancy of words within sentences. So process. You see that, Pavan? Aha, yeah, you've started. Said, yeah, it's preparing. It's not process, it's preparing. Good, yeah, so pay attention to those, students. Frederick says the process has 4 phases: incoming information, analysis and forecasting, preparing the broadcast, and broadcast. Yeah, we don't need to capitalize those. They are common nouns. It's just for the headings. They've been capitalized, Frederick, so you can make those letters small for those names. Also, I would use the word for instead of the number 4 in this case, Frederick. And phases is spelled P-H-A-S-E-S, phases, okay, P-H-A-S-E-S, not passes. Oh, I see what you're saying there, Frederick. The process passes 4 stages. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's okay. Passes 4 stages. It's okay. It's a tiny bit awkward, but it's comprehensible. All right. Samuel says, at first glance, it's clear that there are 4 stages, which are incoming info, analyzing, preparing the data, and broadcasting to the public, with each of them having several parts except the latter. Very nice, Samuel. I love that use of except the latter there. It's very accurately used, very cleverly used. Good job on that, Samuel. Except the latter. Yeah, nice. The reason I like that, Samuel, is because it's called concise writing. It means you're using the minimum number of words to have a clear idea. Concise writing is an extremely important part of written communication at the academic and professional levels. So you should always be aiming for concise writing. That means maximum clarity with minimum number of words. Okay. Daniel says there are 4 main stages that encompass the Bureau's work: gathering information, analyzing the forecast, preparing the broadcast, and finally broadcasting. Very nice lead-in, Daniel. So notice Daniel's lead-in. There are 4 main stages that encompass the Bureau's work. That's really nice. Students, use the word for in this case because you're not really referring to the data so much. So you want to use words for numbers 0 to 10 in this kind of a situation. Okay. Abhishek says, at first glance, it's clear that the 4 major parts of the agency, namely incoming, there are 4 major responsibilities of the agency, not parts, Abhishek. That's a different idea. So one more time, Abhishek. At first glance, it is clear that there are 4 major responsibilities of the agency, namely incoming information, analysis, forecasting, broadcast, preparation, and broadcasting. Okay, that's good. All right. Good work. Jainil, overall, there are 4 steps to the process: data collecting, analyzing, preparing the broadcast, and eventually broadcasting. It's simple, Jainil, but as long as you write clearly, it's still a good approach to getting at least a band 7, if not a bit more. Okay. All right. So here is my full overview together, of course, with the introduction. These elements do not have to be separate in your essay. In fact, they usually read better when they're together. Okay, so this flow diagram depicts the system used by the Australian Bureau of Meteorology to gather up-to-the-minute data on weather to create a dependable forecast which it can transmit to the public through various means. There are 4 clear stages to this process, including incoming information, analysis, and forecasting, preparing the broadcast, and broadcasting. Each of these have multiple elements except for preparing the broadcast. So notice again what I said at the beginning, that if you don't see, so think about this again here, members. I just want to emphasize this one more time. If you don't see the diagram that I'm talking about, but I read this overview for you, I think you can still get a very clear idea of the information. Am I correct on that? So just by telling you this, you can start to get a picture of what I'm talking about without actually seeing the picture, right? So that's your goal. Okay, that's your goal. And then, of course, next comes the analysis. Okay. So let's do that in just a moment here. All right. And the analysis, of course, makes up the main body. Of course, in the real exam, don't write the word analysis. Just write the actual body paragraph. Don't write this word, okay? Don't write overview, right? Abhishek, Janil, Hassan, Frederick says, yeah, I got you. Okay, so yeah, you can figure out what we're talking about, right? All right. Good. So now comes our analysis. And for the analysis, what makes the most sense here? Okay. So it's a difficult picture to get it all into one frame for me without it being really tiny. So I'm just going to move through this with you. It's okay. We don't need to see it all. So here's the picture. Here are, again, the topics for each column. What makes the most sense for your strategy to report this information to a listener so that they clearly get what you're talking about? So what do you think you should do here? Okay. What should you do here? What's your best approach? And again, here you have to be really clever, because if you take the wrong approach, it's going to be a very confusing essay. And even if you have good English skills and good vocabulary, it won't get nearly as good of a mark as it could if the information is confusing. Coherence is a big part of your score, especially for those high bands. Yeah, so Pavan says, well, it's scanned from left to right. So kind of as I said, right, Pavan, you're paying attention. Okay. Yeah, Hassan says, take each stage and go from there. So the start here would obviously be the incoming information. That would be number one. And then number two would be the analysis forecasting, then preparing the broadcast, and then 4 would be broadcast, moving, of course, from left to right, okay? From getting all of the information to getting it to the public. That makes the most sense. And then, of course, you're moving left to right, and at the same time, you're moving top down. So this diagram is actually quite well organized if you're paying careful attention. So starting with incoming information, starting with the satellite, okay? And then moving from the satellite down to the radar, and then moving down from the radar to the drifting buoy. I'll, of course, make these a little bit bigger so you can see these words in a minute, but I'm just showing you that you're moving from left to right, top to down, okay? All right? Now, of course, you're following these paths. So the very, very first point that you want to write about is the satellite, okay? All right, so let's do that. So here's the satellite, okay? For the first sentence, all the information that you need is satellite, radar, and perhaps satellite photo, okay? So write that first sentence from satellite, and of course, starting with incoming information, okay? So incoming information, satellite, radar, satellite photo. That is what you need there. Hint, hint, you might want to think of a correlative conjunction here to write a good first sentence, okay? I'm going to do the same. All right, I'll make this a little bit bigger so you can see the words here one more time. So it's incoming information. Let me just grab my annotations off the board here. Okay, so it's incoming information. You have your space satellite, okay? You have your satellite photo. You have your radar here, okay? You have to know where to stop in this case as well. Otherwise, you could write a really long and confusing sentence, okay? So let's do this. I will write the opening sentence to the analysis. You do the same, and then we shall compare. Okay? All right. Okay, that's my first sentence. Let's see what you come up with. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of nice long sentences for that first one. Here we go. The weather prognostic data is collected from satellite radar and a drifting buoy, which is presented through satellite picture, radar screen, and synoptic charts, respectively, for analysis. Dr. Krishna, I think it's too much information. If I'm your audience and I'm not an expert in meteorology, I would start getting confused a little bit if I read all that. Okay, so what I recommend doing, Dr. Krishna, and of course everyone, is think about your essay like you're writing this for an educated audience, but they may not be experts in the field of meteorology. Okay, so you don't want to put too much information into one expression because then it can become confusing. Okay. Hassan says, in the first stage, once the information is collected via 3 components, satellite, radar, drifting buoy, the information is then sent to the next phase, which is analyzing the forecast. Hassan, kind of the same as Dr. Krishna. I think you're starting off too quick, too heavy, and you're actually writing some information that's a bit misleading because the drifting buoy, I don't know where some of you got that, but the drifting buoy does not give information to the radar, at least not according to this chart. Okay. Either that or the chart is mislabeled. So all I'm seeing here is the buoy creates a synoptic chart, then the synoptic chart is sent to the radar station. So I suppose if you link that, then it is. Okay. And you also have what seems like outgoing information. So there's definitely some interesting back and forth movement here between the radar station and the drifting buoy. I don't recommend including all of this information into this first sentence. This should be a separate component that you can clearly discuss. Okay, this is arguably the most confusing component of this chart. Of course, one reason being that we can't see the movement of this information. There's no arrows provided here, so we can only assume that it's back and forth. So that's a little bit awkward. Do you see what I'm saying? So including all of that with this top information, I think is too much. Okay, I think it's too much. There's a lot going on in this first phase of incoming information. So I don't recommend trying to sum all of that up in one sentence. Okay. Samuel, exactly because we don't have arrows, we can only infer, means make an educated guess. And that's why we have to be extra careful in this case. Hopefully IELTS is a little bit more proactive in recent exams and includes arrows. Samuel, I don't think it's so much open to creativity as it is to inference. Inference meaning an educated guess. Okay. All right. So Frederick says the data starts from transmissions such as satellite and radar in the initial process, collecting data using the satellite radar to send to analyze forecasting and radar screen. Again, a little bit too much in there, Frederick. Okay, this is what I did. I just started quite simple. So all I said here is in the initial stage, a satellite collects information to both produce satellite photos and send the data to a radar station. Okay, so this is what I meant by that correlative conjunction, both and. Okay, don't overwhelm your audience with too much information. All right, okay, let's go to the second point here. So I'm going to move along a little bit faster now that we have some clarity. Just write, students, try to be fluent, don't try to be perfect. So I'm going to describe this process here where there's obviously a synoptic chart. This is like this, synoptic chart. Okay, so there's a synoptic chart that's being produced by the buoy. We don't know if that's actually sent to the radar or if the satellite, I think what it might be here is that the satellite is also, I think there should be a joining there. The satellite is also producing this synoptic chart. Okay, so the radar station, the buoy, and the satellite all produce a synoptic chart. Okay, so that's, I think, the most logical inference here. I think the mistake on the designer's part is not linking the satellite line here. I think that's a little bit confusing. Okay. So radar screen, it's produced by the radar. The synoptic chart is produced by all three components. So radar screen being produced by the radar, that's definitely our second. And this is definitely our third, that's produced by all of them. Okay. So let's write these sentences. Okay. I'm going to do that and then we'll compare. So in addition, the radar creates an image on the radar screen of weather patterns. Okay. So in addition, the radar creates an image of weather patterns on the radar screen from the information that it gathers. As well, a synoptic chart. Okay, so just follow with me here or write it in your own way. Is mapped using the incoming information from not only the satellite and radar, but also from drifting buoys. Okay. All right. So that takes care of that first column. And that's the most difficult one. Okay. Clearly, that's the most difficult one here. So this is what I would say that first column represents. Now, if you're finding this a little bit confusing, members, because that diagram's a bit hard to see in this lesson, don't worry about it because you'll see it very clearly once I post it. Somebody did suggest posting these in the community board before the class, and I'll write a note for myself to remember that, okay? But I believe that's what's going on here, okay? So now, again, I'm just going to move along smoothly here, and I keep looking at what you're responding, Samuel Pavan, so just keep writing. If I see something interesting, I'll address it. It's just to make time here. So now we go to the analysis and forecasting, okay? And this is going to be a bit easier because now we can sum up these three pieces of information that's produced from the sources. So the satellite photo, the radar screen, and the synoptic chart. Okay. So in the next stage, the Bureau of Meteorology analyzes and compares the information presented by the satellite photos, the radar screen, and the synoptic chart. From this information, the Bureau is able to prepare a broadcast for the public using digital media. Okay, so instead of writing computer here, I'm just going to simply write digital media. Okay, all right. Hassan says the analysis stage, the information which is collected via different sources, is analyzed in 3 different ways: satellite photo, radar screen, and the synoptic charts. Okay, good. Daniel says, then a radar screen with weather movements is created by the station, and a synoptic chart is provided according to the data from the satellite, radar, and buoy. Okay, here in these stages, they're less complex than that first one, so you can kind of string it together. Okay. Finally, the information is presented to the public through television broadcasts. And let's see what those other ones are: radio and recorded announcement. Okay. Okay, so now we get to the part of the summary. So how do I summarize all of this? What do we learn from this? What can we tell our audience where they can say, hey, okay, that gave me a little bit more to go on, which is sensible. Okay, so your summary. Now, I'm just going to give it to you here today, but I'd love for you to practice this for future diagrams, okay? So notice that the question even says that the Australian Bureau of Meteorology is giving reliable information on the weather. Why? Well, because they have multiple sources of data collection, which increases the reliability of their reports. And they also make sure that the public can easily access this information by giving multiple sources for the information. So when I carefully look at this data, what I can summarize from it is that this bureau pays careful attention to its reliability and to the accessibility of this information through these multiple methods. And that's what gives me that summary that the IELTS examiner would love to see, so that they can give you that band 9 and say, hey, yeah, this person is not only going to be okay in university with English, but they're going to be a leading student in their classes and in their field of study, right? So in summary, it is evident from the diagram that the high degree of weather forecast reliability is a result of multiple sources of data collection. In addition, attention is paid to multiple mediums of delivery for the public to access this or the forecast. Okay, so that would be my summary. All right, and there you have roughly 200, 210 words, which would give you that task completion, not just the bare minimum of 150 words, and that higher band score. Okay. Dr. Krishna says, from the assembled data the agency manages to prepare and release via different media. At the end, weather forecast is published on TV, radio, and recorded announcement. Nice, Dr. Krishna. That works. Okay, good job, students. So here we go. I'm going to read this, and then I will post it on the community board as well. So this flow diagram depicts the system used by the Australian Bureau of Meteorology to gather up-to-the-minute data on weather to create dependable forecasts, which it can transmit to the public through various means. There are 4 clear stages to this process, including incoming information, analysis and forecasting, preparing the broadcast, and broadcasting. Each of these have multiple elements except for preparing the broadcast. Analysis. In the initial stage, a satellite collects information to both produce satellite photos and send the data to a radar station. In addition, the radar creates an image of weather and patterns on the radar screen from the information that it gathers. As well, a synoptic chart is mapped using the incoming information from not only the satellite and radar, but also from drifting buoys. In the next stage, the Bureau of Meteorology analyzes and compares the information presented by the satellite photos, the radar screen, and the synoptic chart. From this information, the Bureau is able to prepare a broadcast for the public using digital media. Finally, the information is presented to the public through television broadcast, radio, and recorded announcement. In summary, it is evident from the diagram that the high degree of weather forecast reliability is a result of multiple sources of data collection. In addition, attention is paid to multiple mediums of delivery for the public to access the forecast. Whew. Okay, it's a mouthful, but again, you see what I mean? If I just give you this information without showing you the chart, and maybe say it a little bit slower, then you will have a very clear idea of what I'm talking about, and what this all means, again, without having to see the diagram. Okay. All right. So, members, some nice writing today. I hope that makes sense. Again, a big part of getting that high band score isn't simply just using the right vocabulary, the right sentences, but it's really having the right content and the right flow of structure. So make sure to pay attention to that and think about your audience as an educated audience who does not see the diagram and who is not an expert necessarily on the topic that you're discussing. Okay? All right. Frederick says, that's looking good. It's very clear. All right. Nice work, everyone. Coming up in 30 minutes, I'll host a listening practice class for everyone. Everybody can join the chat. Hopefully, I will see you for that. Once more, to get lots of HD videos that are pre-recorded, where you have great audio and picture and diagrams, check us out at aehelp.com for academic IELTS and gieltshelp.com for general IELTS. I'm Adrian, presenting to you from Budapest. Signing out for now. Hopefully, I'll see you in half an hour. Bye.